I mean, the regulations are not there to restrict you that much. Of course, it is restricting to a sense, but they're really in place for you.
Johanna is a seasoned expert with a remarkable journey from building talking toothbrushes to shaping global strategies at Spotify and Cambi. Johanna shares her Scandinavian approach to innovation, blending it with the dynamic energy of Dubai. We'll explore her passion for tackling regulatory challenges, powering teams through hackathons, and the secret sauce behind Spotify's success. What was the most surprising thing that you found in Dubai? I know you came here last year.
The warmth of the people when I came, and the motivation and ambition there is. Like most people here, they don't only have their full-time job, they also have like 1 or 2 side projects, which is like such an amazing thing. People really love what they do and strive to be even better.
And how did you get into product management?
My dad, he is a system developer. And when I was a kid, we actually built circuit boards together and we programmed them. So I already got an introduction to technology early on in my life. And I just loved playing Nintendo Wii for some time. I did Mario Kart and I was really interested in like the technology itself. Like if I go this way with my hands, it steers. Like the car is moving. So I was like so intrigued by that technology. And when I graduated high school, I actually developed a talking toothbrush for children, which actually gave feedback in real time on your brushing technique. I was actually so intrigued by the technology itself. So I figured, what can we do with this technology? So I did the other way around. I actually looked at the solution first and then started to think of how can we apply this in our day-to-day life? And brushing your teeth is not that great. I mean, it's not fun. And the way you're learning is from your parents, which also learned from their parents. And when you go to the dentist are saying, are you doing this? Are you like brushing every day for 2 times? Well, it doesn't matter if you're brushing 2 times a day if you're not doing it the right way, right?
After that, you went to college, started business, and then how did you jump into Spotify? One of the best businesses in Sweden?
I didn't do that directly. So when I was studying, I also approached a tech company and say, okay, I have experience in project management. I'm currently studying, but I'm really interested in tech and IT. So could I just do an internship as a project manager?
Oh, so you approached them and told them that I would work for an internship?
Yeah, because I'm also like, I could try. Let's try. Let's see if I can do this because I'm really interested in learning more. And I also needed a kind of break from also just studying. Because if you're not really applying what you're learning, then what are you learning it for?
We have a big audience and most of them they're always asking me questions about how to get into product management, or especially young women, professional women, how to get into product management. And when I tell them, hey, you should reach out or gold approach or reach out to companies, no one does that. It's very scary to get no.
I mean, but you need to go outside of your comfort zone. That's what it's all about. I mean, product management is basically to have the courage to be wrong as well, because that's what we do. We test hypotheses. And if you're always right, then you're not doing a good job, right?
And you interviewed for this company. You got a job as an intern?
Mm-hmm. And I got to stay, which was great. And I just loved it. And I went from being an IT project manager into product management, because doing the projects, that's great. I mean, that's wonderful. You have the pre-study and then you execute and then you deliver and you have no idea how it's going to be perceived by the users. So instead of doing that, you can actually start to own the product and iterate and also, perfect it, because it's not going to be perfect when you release it.
When you look back, what is remember any mistakes that you did very early on?
I would say one of the biggest mistakes is to not ask questions. Having that kind of notion that I need to know and I need to understand what they're saying, because there is a lot of abbreviations and there is a lot of internal lingos that is not really coming directly to you when you're new, especially if you're new into product management or tech in general. Then you need to understand what you're really doing. And it's okay to ask as well, because that's what we do. I mean, if we're not having a clear communication, how should we collaborate?
And I think communication is the most important skill for product managers, not tech, not design, not customer research, even though all those important, but be able to communicate and articulate yourself and influence people without authority. This makes this job so hard and so exciting the same. After that, what was your next step, career step?
Oh, I actually went into consultancy. I was actually employed in the beginning because I really, really wanted to excel, and I really wanted to fast forward my experience and also getting all kind of knowledge that there is. I was just like so eager to learn everything. So I felt like, okay, let's go into consultancy and I can learn as much as possible through working with multiple clients and constellations. And I did that for a year. And then I realized, because I went into a meeting with my boss and she told me, your next step in your career is that you're able to sell yourself, more or less. And I figured, okay, but then I can just start my own company and then I can actually choose which clients I want to work with myself and when I can have vacation or not. So I did. And that was, what was it? 7, 8 years ago. And ever since, I have been working with my own clients.
Oh God, that was a scary jump, no?
Yeah. You need to, because if you feel like you're comfortable, and I mean, it depends really on what kind of stage in life you are in. But I felt like I'm really eager to see where this could lead me. And you just need to try. What is the worst thing that could happen?
You joined one of my favorite product companies, Spotify. How was it?
Where to begin? So first of all, it's a very big company. At the time, I think that the product department was around 500 people, which is insanely big. But the way they organize themselves, I guess you know, with all the missions and tribes and everything, makes every product manager to have their own kind of startup in a sense. They're so autonomous. They have their own responsibilities and they act as it was their own company. This little part of the product, which is also so exciting for someone working with product, because what we want to do is, of course, experiment and try things out. And I really think that in combination with the great collaboration was just their key to success.
What's the secret sauce for Spotify? You mentioned that product managers are truly empowered and it's their own startup. What else?
But it's not about so much the experience itself, but the soft skills. We are teams and the collaboration is so essential.
Any learnings that you learned from your time on Spotify that you took with you to the rest of your career?
Yeah. To actually be able to experiment, to actually have the faith and just try it out. Because I feel like sometimes when you're so focused on that you need to succeed, that you need to be right on your hypothesis, you're just playing it safe. I mean, you need to be bold. In order to be in the forefront, you actually need to take some risks. Of course, you need to do some risk assessment as well. Not do too much about risk, of course, but you need to try. And at Spotify, in my experience, they celebrated failure in a sense, because that's one step closer to success.
You describe product leadership as the Swiss Army knife, versatile and sharp. What do you mean exactly by this?
Well, you need to have different kind of tool sets. You need to have all of them available. And I would say that the scissor, to me, is one of the most used product or peace in that sense, because with the scissor, you can, cut off the axis. Regardless if it's in a roadmap, if it's in a backlog. I hate backlogs. Like long backlogs, just scrap it. Or just cutting off the noise in that sense. But when it comes to the scissor, you can do so much more than just cutting. You could use it as a thong to bend things. You could use it as a knife, depending on how sharp you need to have it. So it's also a tool itself that have a primary purpose, but at the same time, you can also use it for so much more.
Why do you hate backlogs?
I don't hate backlogs in that sense, but if there is a lot of placeholders that never ever will happen, I mean, you're supposed to act on fresh data and fresh insights. And if you have a wish, just delete it. And if it's urgent enough, it will come back for sure. So why do you want to clutter your tools that are supposed to be working for you, not against you? Just create clarity.
Every time I get a product manager job, I used to inherit a big backlog. And I used to, hey, let's go to a new project. And I used to delete everything and we start fresh. And 99% of those user stories in the backlogs are old or they're useless.
Yeah.
Product management is filled with a lot of tools and frameworks. And every new month we have a new tools or framework. But there's any tools or frameworks that you always come back to and you actually find useful in your day-to-day job as a product leader?
Well, it's always different depending on what kind of company, industry, the size, the organization, how the teams are organized themselves. I would actually say that I just love having small hackathons as a part of the cadence. You don't need to have them after every sprint, but maybe after every planning in that sense. I mean, because what you want to do is also to enable the team. I mean, the team is working with your product full time. They are really the stars, and those are the ones that actually know what to do. Maybe not what to do, but what kind of solutions there is.
Marty Geegan said that if your developers only creating code, you're getting 50% of their value. Mm-hmm. So I love the idea that to empower engineers in the sense of a hackathon. But how to run a hackathon? I mean, I don't know exactly. Should I go tell the engineers, hey, you have 2 days or a week to create a solution. These are the problems. Or how exactly do you think is the best way to run a hackathon?
As I usually do it within the teams is basically that we say, you have 2 days, free time. You will do whatever you want to do. If that is learning a new language, learning a new library, reading up on something, with all means, do that. Or I'm having this kind of goals, like the business goals, or this is the challenges that we see. Could we together find, a concept, a proof of concept, even a prototype, and just get loose, get creative? And I would say that one of the biggest and most ambitious projects I have been working with, they came from an actual hackathon as well. So why do you, as a company, attract so much talent and experience if you're not really using it? Because product management should not be telling people what to do. It should be telling why. Why are we doing this? And how we're solving it? And what to do. That's something that we do together.
Do you have any story that you can share about an idea that really emerged from a hackathon?
Absolutely. When I was working at Spotify, I was working within one of their mountain bat, as they call it. So it was a big initiative where they invested a lot of efforts. And that was called the car thing. Now it's deactivated. It's not there anymore. But what we did was basically, we did see in the user research in early stages where we had a couple of users getting this product for free just to try it out. We did see that a lot of sessions were interrupted at the same time. And this was not so much information to get from, But it was enough for us to wonder, why is this? So we started to look at the time zone they were in and realized that this is during sunrise or sunset. So it must be related to the screen. So why don't we have like a night mode? And how do we do that? Because we had this the screen that was like turning on and off, or like dim and getting lighter depending on the surrounding light. But it was like a very technical product. Yeah. So having that in mind, and we had so much regulations as well, you know, driver safety, there was the accessibility, there was artwork that belongs to the records or the artists. You can't really temper too much with that. So I told my team, let's do something about it. And they got creative, so creative that we actually went out testing it in real life. We hired a car, got the team inside of it, and just drove back and forth and trying out all the different solutions there was. And then we decided for one. So that was a proof of concept that we really felt like, okay, this is going to be a great functionality.
I love this story. But people who are listening might say hackathon is a good idea to do a Spotify, but if I did it in my company, certain individuals might not do anything and just take the day off and say, hey, I'm working, hey, I'm learning something new, but they're not. Or did you face any of this, or no, not really?
Not really. I mean, it's also, we're humans. Sometimes you're very motivated and sometimes not. But I think regardless, if you're working, then you're expected to produce something. So when it comes to hackathons, you could also say, I don't feel like I'm creative enough or having the motivation to do this, and just continue ticking off tickets.
And in consulting, you've worked with so many domains, industries, projects. Do you have any domain that you get very excited about?
I mean, I love highly regulated markets. I know, right? It's so strange. I'm one of the people that get so excited when there is complexity.
So I come from FinTech. I used to work in big banks. No, I hate highly regulated. What do you like about it?
Well, I mean, the regulations are not there to restrict you that much. Of course, it is restricting to a sense, but they're really in place for you. I mean, they're in place for the government, they're in place for the companies and the individuals as well. So when you start thinking of it as a tool itself and how it could be used for you instead of against you, then you have an advantage, right? It's the same with the scissor. If you know how to use the scissor, then it's a great tool. But if you don't...
So you're saying, let's say if you go into a high regulated market, let's say sports betting, crypto, fintech, one of the things that you need to do is first study regulations and know exactly what are the parameters that you can play within.
Well, of course, you need to study them. That's the first way on how to get knowledge about it. But it's also on interpreting it. What does it mean? And also start to discuss it. Because how would you otherwise know? If you're just looking at it as it is, then you don't really know how it applies. And if you've been to law school, you're also using the law book as a tool. Because it's guidance, but it's guidance on both sides, what you can and cannot do.
So what advice do you give to product managers that are stepping into a highly regulated market?
It goes in line with everything else. Don't be prestigious and have this idea of that you need to understand everything and you need to know everything from the beginning. You need to dissect. You need to ask. You need to have that dialogue with your colleagues because that's how you're really getting the most out of it. I mean, you can't be a star in every area because product management is not about being the expert in every area. What we do is that we get people to collaborate and we make the most out of people's abilities.
You work as a consultant and you work with several clients. My question to you, and you mentioned the importance of communication. What do you do when you get a new client and you enter a team and you want to build their trust to influence the team?
To start with, I'm not one of the consultants that come in, say, okay, this is what I'm going to deliver, work for myself for a couple of weeks, then do a presentation and then send the invoice and say, bye. That's not me. What I do is actually that I, as you said, join the team. So what do you do when you join a team? Regardless of you're a new employee or you're a consultant, you adapt and you listen, because speech is silver, silence is golden.
When company go and hire a fractional product leadership, what is exactly the most common gaps that you see that they're trying to fill?
So for smaller companies and startups, it's usually that the co-founders don't have the experience and knowledge themselves, and they just need some guidance. Are we going in the right direction? Kind of, but they don't need a full-time employee to do that. So instead of having the big investment of taking in an employee for just doing product, they could just have a fractional one, which is, if you're taking it in part-time and more of a advisory and strategic, then the actual execution could be done by themselves. And that's also how they could learn to become product managers of themselves. When it comes to the bigger companies, I would say that maybe you are providing a fresh perspective. And of course, you're providing your past experience and knowledge as well.
I get this question from a lot of my female audience, which is how to become more assertive or how to negotiate, because they have a plan, they have a good argument when they enter the meeting, maybe because they're a woman or they don't feel as powerful or to argue. How was your experience being a woman in product management?
I think it's different for us women because we tend to think a lot. Stereotypically, we do. I do too. Not saying that I don't. But, I mean, we're still humans. And you still need to prove your point. How would you otherwise be successful in delivering your argument? And if you need to practice or prepare, do that. There are some great books about this. There is one called Never Split the Difference. I love that book. Yeah, I love that book. It's applicable as well in everything in life. And you, as a woman, you have every right to be there the same way as a man.
So when you join a company as a product leadership, again, you focus, let's say on a startup, they have too many things to focus on. Then they want to build so many products. How do you help them focus, or they are struggling from growth? How do you help them grow? What do you exactly do?
I would say that we just need to scrap what is not the most important thing. If we're having too many initiatives, too many things going on at the same time, there is a lot of context switch, and that's not good for productivity or efficiency in that sense. So it's also to actively say, let's take a decision of what is most important right now, and then we can take the next things after we're done.
Let's say you join a company and it's again founder-led and you're the first product manager. There's a tension between you, hey, I'm a new product manager, I'm the one who's going to lead the products, and the founder like, oh no, I create the company, I'm going to create the founder. How do you solve this tension? Have you ever faced that?
Yes, of course. So one part of it is, what is the initial idea? What are we trying to achieve? So I really need to understand that before I can come in and questionize and make changes in the direction. But I think the most important thing when it comes to startups is when you have an idea, you do the MVP or the launchable version of the product, but then you really need to switch the focus and starting to look more into the insights of how it's actually used, because it's not about what you want to build anymore. It's about what the customer needs.
But what about you when you join something new, like gaming or sport betting or something they don't have any domain in? What do you do to gain so much knowledge in such a short period of time?
I interact with everyone. like support. Like customer support is a great tool. You get to know like the end user's pain points. You get to know like what are the real challenges, as well as the other functions within the company as well. Of course, the engineers, the data scientists and designers, researchers. I talk a lot and I just ask. That's how you're getting the knowledge.
It's one of the things that I suggest when a product manager, he doesn't have a lot of technical aptitude, and he was like, hey, how can I improve? Should I download this course or do these things? Like, dude, just attend a few meetings with a developer, ask questions, shadow them for a week, you know exactly the technology that they're building. And I think, yeah, this tool hasn't been utilized enough.
I think there is a balance between asking too many questions as well. I think you need to also write down some questions and start to do your research on your own. And then you can also take the questions that you really, really can't find yourself. Because it's a balance as well, asking loads of questions and taking up the time and capacity for someone, or asking the qualified questions where you have tried to find the answer to it yourself and then really get the help.
But your career is very interesting. You worked in Stockholm, then you work here in Dubai. And I'm just curious, how does this geography really influence your product leadership?
So in Sweden, it's one kind of leadership style. And coming here, it was completely different. I do have most of my network from before in Sweden, in Europe and US, and not so much here. So in the beginning, it was a lot to, again, not come and say, I know all of this, I have this experience, but also how can I adapt? How can I use what I know and also adapt to the leadership styles there is here? And again, we're continuously learning. And that was why I also made the decision to come here, because that's the next step. I know what to do in Sweden. I've been doing that for quite some time. And this is just widening my skills.
So let's say if there's a lot of product managers, product leaders want to come from Sweden, Europe, US, want to come here to work in Dubai, what is the different style that they should know about, or the different change they should need to adapt to when they come here in the region? Or it's all the same?
Of course, it's not the same. There is always differences when it comes to different locations. But in my opinion, if you haven't been in a multicultural organization before, because there is a lot of different cultures here as well. So if you're used to one way of communicating or one way of doing things, it's even more important to be aware of not everyone have the same experience and background as you, and not have the same communication styles as you do. So it's more to check up. Do we really understand each other? Are we on the same page? And how are we going to collaborate together?
We reached the end of the episode, but I have one final question, which is, what is the one piece of advice for product managers looking to make meaningful impact in their organizations?
So a lot of product management nowadays is talking about the how and the what. What should we do? What kind of solutions should we have? And that goes a lot along with the AI. The hype is just, I mean, if we're going from thinking about the solution first, we are in deep water. We really need to understand the why. Why are we doing this? How is that connected to the business goals? And why are we trying to do this? And what are we trying to achieve? And then we can start about how can we solve this? But to really understand the why, and then you really need to do your research. You really need to understand the user behaviors. Data is great to have. It's good to have data, but it's even better if you understand what the data is really about. So you actually need to do the analysis. But not only that, because you also need to understand where is the data coming from and how it's collected. So for example, if you're doing a research, let's do an interview or a survey. If you're asking a question, do you like this product? That's a yes or no question. Then if you're using that kind of data, I don't know if that's really reliable in a sense for making a decision, because you don't really want to steer the user to justify your hypothesis. It's about understanding the overall need and the overall perception of the product itself.
So this is how you balance being informed, being data obsessed?
Yeah, of course, because not all the data is reliable on itself. And it's usually a different kind of set of data that you also need to take into consideration.
How do you ensure that the companies who are gathering those data actually act upon it?
Well, that's the essence of doing a product development. Each iteration should have some kind of idea, what do we want to achieve? Because you need to follow up. Did we actually achieve what we tried? Otherwise, you will just be a feature factory, taking out features, and you have no idea of how it's impacting the user or the actual product itself.
Where our audience can go learn more about you, more about your work. We have a few companies that listen to this podcast. If they want to have your assistance or your consultancy within their organization, how can they learn more about you?
I have LinkedIn, as you probably know. So you can find me there, or you can find me on curiosare.tech. So curiosare is actually an Italian word for investigating more thoroughly. So it goes in line with what I do.